Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Justice, and today we're going to be jumping into the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise with the one, the only original 1984 film. Now, this film was one of my earliest introductions to the slasher genre. When my mom was still around, she introduced me to this franchise and many of the other big horror greats because she was proudly an 80s kid who got to see that huge slasher boom when it happened, and whether or not I was too young to watch these movies is a completely different topic than today's video, because these films scared the absolute piss out of me when I was a kid. I essentially had free reign to watch whatever I wanted, but after having a few nightmares after seeing this, I was briefly banned from watching this franchise. This entry specifically was the scariest to me. Just the idea of something as mundane as having a bad dream ultimately leading to your demise is a terrifying concept, a concept maybe even more terrifying than the franchise that it's in. Because unlike other slashers where you can yell at the characters for making dumb decisions, this one, you can't avoid sleep forever, and once you finally do go to bed, that's right when Freddy attacks. It's not a dumb person running up the stairs when you tell them not to run up the stairs. It's falling asleep. It's something you literally have to do to survive. There is almost no way to avoid that penultimate peril before your death in these movies either. And I suppose for those who haven't seen this film, which if you haven't, what are you doing, man? Get right on it. It follows a group of teens who fall prey to Freddy Krueger, a now deceased burn victim who hunts teenagers in their dreams, which in turn kills them in the real world. After investigating, Nancy begins to suspect that a dark secret kept by her and her friend's parents may be the key to unraveling the mystery. But can Nancy solve this puzzle before she too falls asleep? This movie was made at the exact right time and caught lightning in a bottle. And typically, I'm not the biggest fan of more fantastical stories, which I can unfortunately say later installments do fall into the pitfall of in this franchise. This first one, though, even with the fantasy dream elements, feels more grounded in reality as you see this all-American mask this film wears proudly with a group of relatable and rootable teens, only for that mask to fall off as Freddy slowly starts to shred his way into this previously quiet neighborhood. As I suspect you inevitably already know, this film came from master of horror Wes Craven, who notably directed other such big films as Last House on the Left or The Hills Have Eyes. And I really feel like I'm missing something here, and I'm not quite sure what it could be, you guys. Oh yeah, he also directed the first 4 fucking Scream movies. This man was a true horror juggernaut, and when creating the story of Freddy, he was inspired by a true story of a boy terrified of going to sleep, only to eventually die after days of not sleeping when he finally went to bed. You have our cast of teens Freddy's coming after in this film, and I think I'll cover them in the order they died in and kind of have this be a little bit of a scattered review as I treat each death as a point to get to. But the first one on the list and our faux final girl is Tina. We open the movie with her, and I do believe with how heavily she is focused on for the first act of the film, they lead you to believe that she is our heroine of the movie, very much giving her the Marion Crane psycho treatment. Her parents are gone for the weekend, and she finds herself plagued by nightmares of a man in a fedora, a Christmas sweater, and wielding a glove with knives on the end. She asks her friends to stay over for the night because she's scared to be alone, and it leads to one of the most iconic and brutal sequences in slasher history. I can't even begin to state how good the whole scene is. It's also our first full-on introduction to Freddy in the movie, because previously we'd really only been given glances of him, and I very much don't need to be the one to say this because you already know it, but Robert Englund completely embodies this role. He is by far what popularized a witty slasher killer in my opinion, and no one can play Freddy quite like he does, and though he isn't quite the wisecracking killer that he is in the later installments in this first entry, you still see glimmers of his over-the-top one-liners throughout the entire movie.
I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy.
Tina's nightmare, though, starts as Freddy throws rocks at the window to lure her outside, and then we get our stretchy arm Freddy chasing her down an alley, and then him slicing off a couple of his own digits and spurting out this green goo, which, yes, is extremely 80s, admittedly, looking back at it, but a badass effect nonetheless, and this entire nightmare is brutally iconic as we go from set piece to set piece to set piece in it. The scene is then topped off with Freddy slashing her in her dream, and in the real world, she's seen being dragged up the wall and onto the ceiling with no person there as her boyfriend Rod watches helplessly. It's even cooler looking at the practical effects of this from behind the scenes, and this is a side note. I'm sure in my series of next videos for these movies I'll be referencing a lot, but you should really check out the Never Sleep Again documentary if you haven't. It is such a thorough timeline about the entire franchise, and I learned a lot of my behind-the-scenes facts about these movies from that doc. Apparently, though, they had Rod's actor harnessed so he'd stay on the floor, and then the entire room was built to rotate, so Tina's actress could literally just crawl around the room as it flipped around. And before I saw that behind-the-scenes tidbit, I'd always wondered how they were able to accomplish that, and I never would have guessed they did that, and it just proves yet again that oftentimes you should probably do effects in your movie practically rather than CGI, because you can make it work better, man. After her death, though, we meet our true heroine of the film, Nancy Thompson, played by Heather Langenkamp, and she is such a strong heroine in the slasher genre, and easily one of my personal favorites. You watch her do whatever she can to save her friends and herself after Tina's death, and as she tries to uncover this mystery of who Freddy is, and learning that all the adults in her life, including her own mother and father, know more about Freddy than they'll let on. She keeps a coffee maker and caffeine pills stowed away in her room to stay awake. She figures out how to calculate her dreams so she can go in and get the hell out, to learn more about who Freddy is and how to stop him, and we, the audience, are on the same roller coaster as her as we are left uncovering who this disgusting man was. But shortly after Tina's death, Rod is on the run because he is suspected for having killed Tina, and Nancy's father, who is an officer, is on the case and actually uses Nancy to catch Rod, and they find him hanging out in the bushes in the Elm Street neighborhood as Nancy's on her way from school. And for plot purposes, of course, which ironically, yes, actually it is for plot purposes, Rod is seen wearing nothing but this leather jacket and completely shirtless underneath, and the 80s had a way of showing off men, man, and I feel like I'm gonna comment on that a lot more in this video. Damn, Rod was fine as fuck, man. Rod ultimately gets arrested because nobody understands his story for how Tina was attacked, which then ultimately leads up to his death sequence, which shows him in the jail, and again, really cool behind the scenes things I'm going to mention here as well. Freddy essentially transforms the sheet to wrap up around itself and turn into kind of a snake that wraps around Rod's neck before hanging him, and the effect was accomplished by just filming it in reverse. They like pre-wrapped this sheet around his neck and then just pulled it away and then like reversed the shot so it made it look like it was going around his neck. Again, a very cool thing that they were able to accomplish, and you would never guess just watching the scene. But it's at this point that Nancy's friends are dwindling off faster and faster. The only other person she has left from her group is her boyfriend Glenn, who is played by Johnny Depp, and the way he got hired for this movie, man, it is a sight to behold, because when I was watching the documentary, they talked about how Wes Craven wanted someone in the movie that was more of your typical, like, muscular jock type, and he had all these headshots laid out at home for people he was going to have play Glenn. And then his daughter ended up going through said headshots and saw Johnny Depp's picture and immediately was like, ooh, heartthrob, you need to have him in your movie, Dad. And Wes did not understand it at all, but due to his daughter's request, he threw Johnny Depp a bone and had him in the movie. And I love that tidbit of horror history right there. It's always so funny to me when you see all these really big actors in their early roles starting out in horror movies, and he was no exception to that rule, apparently. Nancy, though, is continuing to struggle to get people to believe her that there is someone coming after her. Her parents just want her to go to sleep and to stop struggling with these nightmares and thinking that she is just traumatized from what's happened to her friends. They take her to a doctor, to this sleep specialist, to like look at her dreams and track them, and it's during this nightmare that Nancy begins to learn that she can actually take things from the dream world into the real world if she grabs them right before she wakes up, because as she's woken up from a nightmare in this hospital sequence, she ends up having Freddy's hat in bed with her and begins to form the plan that maybe she needs to pull Freddy into the real world after all. Also, another side note here, but her drunk of a mother is kind of ironically iconic throughout this whole movie. That woman's blatant alcoholism is kind of funny, with her hiding booze in every nook and cranny she can in their home. Also, her more motherly moments to Nancy are questionable at best, and since I was a kid, a scene that's always cracked me up with her is her revealing that her and the other Elm Street parents murdered Freddy. It doesn't crack me up because it's a bad scene. In fact, it's a really good one, but her line is so strange and alien here.
But he can't get you now. He's dead, honey, because Mommy killed him.
It truly shows you the flipping moment of this nightmare dream world bleeding into the real world and tarnishing the suburban dream as Nancy discovers that her and her friend's parents were involved in the death of Freddy. This leads us to the discovery that Freddy in life was a child murderer, and with very obvious subtext that's almost just text, you can put the two and two together that he was also a child predator, but I think having it not outright said here is far more terrifying and gruesome, and apparently they wanted to have him be more of an outright predator, but due to some awful events that came out during the making of this movie, they decided to cut any story like that from the film out of respect, and I think it's a good thing they did, because like I said, I think it's way more terrifying to be able to put it together than have someone just spoon feed it to you, for a lack of a better term. Building up to this main finale of the film, we have Nancy looking at all these different trap manuals to make all these different booby traps to capture Freddy in. She devises this very Home Alone type plan to pull Freddy into the real world now that she knows that she has this power to do so, and you again see all these really badass moments for her trying to take control of the narrative as she starts to set things up to lure Freddy in and stop him once and for all. She sets up tripwires. There's this light bulb that she fills with gunpowder so it'll explode on him, and you have this axe by the door that's set up to fall down and hit him, and it's just very, very Home Alone before Home Alone was even a thing. She is calling her boyfriend Glenn from next door to try to let him know that she's going to catch Freddy, but before she can jump into her nightmare, poor Johnny Boy is next up on Freddy's list, and I have seen 3 different versions of this death in total, because you have Glenn laying in bed trying to watch Miss Nude America with his headphones on. But then, oh no, he falls asleep, and then Freddy pulls him into the bed. And the very first version I saw of this scene, it cut there because it was on basic cable TV when I was a kid in the 2000s, so of course they weren't going to show the grisly next scene that follows with that. Nowadays it's a completely different story, because I was at the bar the other day and they had New Nightmare playing on one of the TVs on the AMC channel, and it fully showed every grisly detail. So I'm going to imagine that if this movie played on cable today, you would see the whole sequence. But even having that cut out as a kid, that scared the bejesus out of me. But in the actual cut of the film, shortly after he is pulled into the bed, all this blood starts spurting out of it, way more than the human body could ever possibly actually hold. But let's be honest, guys, it looks pretty cool, so we're not going to ask questions. Another behind the scenes tidbit for this sequence is that they actually reused Tina's bedroom for Glenn's bedroom. They flipped the room upside down and they just poured a shitload of blood through a hole in the bed, and they weren't actually expecting it to end up looking like that. It actually ended up causing an on-set accident almost, but that's how they ended up getting the shot, and it looks so damn cool. So sometimes happy mistakes are a really great thing in movies. But originally they were going to show a sequence, and this is the third version I was talking about. This sequence would have had Glenn coming out of the bed after he'd been pulled in. It shows his entire body levitating before dropping onto the mattress, and I am okay with this not being here because after seeing that much blood, I highly doubt that he would have been in one piece. Nancy's father, though, shows up to the house with all the other policemen in an ambulance to investigate the grisly scene, and Nancy calls him and discovers that her boyfriend is dead and assures him that she is going to catch the guy who did this before telling him that she is going to go to sleep to do it. And up to this point, no one believes Nancy still. She does exactly that, though, when she sets an alarm on her watch and goes to bed and ends up pulling him into the real world. Freddy does jump out and start to attack her, and now the nightmare is fully in the real world. And we have Freddy chasing after her, and all those traps I mentioned earlier, he is setting off. But as he chases her through the house, it becomes very cartoony. She takes him to the basement before lighting him on fire, and during all this she's trying to get her father to come into the house and catch him. And then when her father does finally make it into the home, they see that Freddy has disappeared, but all the fire that had been on him is leaving a trail through the home, and Nancy realizes in horror that Freddy is going after her mother now, and she goes rushing upstairs only to see Freddy on top of her sleeping mother, still on fire and burning her, and her dad comes running into the room completely confused about everything that's going on and how this seems less than anything that could possibly ever be real. And he throws a sheet over the fire, and by the time the sheet comes up, we see Freddy is now gone, and what is left of her mother is this smoking skeleton essentially, and it sinks into this void into the mattress before that fades away and the mattress is whole again. Again, a very, very 80s effect with all the ghostly fog that they have in there and like the black light or whatever, but again, really, really cool. Now though, her father sees all this and he believes her, but he's also very stunned and in shock for the whole thing. And Nancy asks her father to leave, which he does so, and almost immediately after that, we have Nancy facing towards the doorway, and we have Freddy rising up out of the mattress, stretching the sheet up with him in this really, really cool scene yet again. And he slices the sheets open and starts to linger towards Nancy. And Nancy decides that she is going to regain her power in this moment and tells Freddy that she understands what he is now. She understands that he's not real, that he's dead, that he's nothing, and that she doesn't believe in him at all. That she wants her life back, and that she wants her friends back and her mother. And then drops, of course, this line on him.
You're nothing. You're shit.
He lunges at her and he ends up essentially fading away because Nancy has regained her power. She's not scared of him. And when she steps out of her mother's room, she realizes that it is daytime now, and she looks behind her and it's her mother sending her to school, and all of her friends are out in the car, and it comes off very dreamlike, the whole sequence. And it very much is like a dream, so obviously a dream, especially when you have her mother, the little Alki through the whole movie being like, you know what? I think I'm just gonna give up drinking. It's not fun anymore, Nancy. But then she sends her daughter to the car with all of her friends to go to school, and she watches smiling, and here comes the twist ending of it all. And I know a lot of other people talk smack about how stupid this ending is. Even Wes Craven hates this fucking ending. Like, it isn't a good ending. It is so freaking cheesy, but I kind of love the cheese of it all, honestly. Because as Nancy gets into the car with her friends, they're in a convertible, and all of a sudden the convertible top comes up on its own, but oh no, it is striped like Freddy's sweater. And then all of a sudden the car starts driving on its own. The doors lock themselves and they try to get out, but they can't. And Nancy's mother is standing over by the door and just waving goodbye to them, like la-di-da-di-da, nothing's happening, before Freddy grabs her and pulls her through the window of the door, which it's not her, it's a fucking dummy. It looked like they just popped over to like Adam and Eve or something and got a blow up doll, and that is what replaced her mother for that shot. It is such an obvious fucking dummy, but it's still iconic nonetheless. But the movie ends with a pan in on a group of schoolgirls doing jump rope to the iconic Freddy Krueger song. When they were making this movie, New Line Cinema knew that they had something good, but they didn't expect it to blow up the way that it did, and it ended up putting New Line Cinema on the map in the 80s, and they even referenced their company as being the house that Freddy built, because that's where they got all their money from, and none of that would have happened without this first installment. This movie is just a testament to the fact that Freddy was going to blow up and be such a huge thing, and I love the socks off of every little bit of it. And though The Nightmare on Elm Street may not be one of my favorite or my favorite slasher franchises, this movie does remain as one of my favorite slasher films of all time because of just how imaginative the whole thing is. But anyways, that's going to wrap up my first video on A Nightmare on Elm Street, and over the coming weeks, I'm going to be covering the rest of the franchise, and you guys should let me know what you thought of this first installment, and if you want to see those future videos covering the rest of the movies, you should click that subscribe button. I would love to have you on the channel. And not just Nightmare on Elm Street movies, I cover everything and anything horror around here, so if that sounds of interest to you, I'd love to have you around here. But with that all the way, this has been Justice, and I really hope to catch you guys on the next one. Take care.